Hello, thank you for joining us for this session, Student Innovation and Initiatives Driving Zero Energy Adoption. I am Connie Umphris, Communications Manager here at New Buildings Institute. Before we begin, I have a couple of housekeeping things to tell you about. First, you are muted and we cannot hear you. This helps keep the background noise down so that everyone can better hear the speakers. I want to direct you to the dashboard that you should be able to see on the right-hand side of your screen. If you are having technical difficulties and cannot see the slides or hear our speakers, you can use the question pane in this dashboard to let us know, and we will help you as we go. We will take questions at the end of the presentation. Please ask questions in the same question pane. All registrants will receive an email tomorrow with links to the recording and slides for this session. If you are seeking AIA credits, please be sure to answer the survey at the end of this session. Kicking off today's session is Riley Loveland, NBI Project Manager. Riley supports NBI staff on various projects, including K-12 schools-related work. Riley also designs and develops NBI workshops, public engagement materials, and other technical and market transformation resources. Over to you, Riley.
Thanks, Connie, and good morning, everyone. Like Connie said, my name is Riley Loveland, and I'm a project manager here over at New Buildings Institute. And welcome to Student Innovation and Initiatives Driving Zero Energy Adoption. Get the screen going here. There we go. So just for some quick background on New Buildings Institute, we research and define leading edge practices and technology applications for high performance buildings, and then we translate them into these innovative and practical solutions for the utility, energy efficiency, and commercial building industries. For those of you seeking continuing education credit, here are the learning objectives for today for you to refer back to as needed. You'll be able to include your AIA credits at the end of this session, and Connie will go over that at the end of this session. I wanted to very quickly mention too that we have a couple more webinars coming up soon. So please check out our website to register. We have one on case studies on the East Coast on Monday, December 16th, and then financing approaches for getting to zero in schools in January. Check out the link at the bottom of the page to register. So before I really dive into our presenters here, I kind of wanted to go over how you get to zero in schools. This will be very quick, I promise. But zero energy schools are a very attainable goal for schools across the nation. NBI maintains this large database. It's actually the largest database of zero energy buildings in the nation. And the data that we see clearly shows that the educational sector is leading the path to zero. And also from this research, we've been able to identify some common themes across these successful zero energy new construction and retrofit projects. Something to point out on this slide too is that the green is a zero energy verified school, which means it's been in operation and has demonstrated zero energy performance for 12 months or more. And the blue are zero energy emerging, which means they may still be in construction, they may not be operating for 12 months, or they're on that path to zero. So this is a list of these common steps on the path to zero energy that your school and these schools can utilize as they work to get to zero. And I really want to point out that, this is a huge process, that getting to zero over time is really the way to approach this. And you can do that by getting stakeholder support, making a commitment, finding your energy and your champions, set your energy targets, and integrate those targets into policies. And using that integrated design process to bring everyone to the table so that you can design and construct to the target and optimize those operations. And then this is what our speakers will be talking about today, is involving students and occupants so that you can utilize the building as this ultimate teaching tool for productive learning spaces. The one that's cut off at the bottom here is to measure, verify, and report your zero energy, because everyone wants to know how well you've done so that they can replicate it too. And on that note, I would like to introduce today's presenters. So we are thrilled to be featuring Sylvia Wallace, who's a design architect from Architecture for Education, and Marianne LaRue from Oxnard Union High School District, and both of them will be telling the stories of how they've been working with students and engaging these students to create and interact with these healthy, productive, and really inspiring learning environments. Come on, slide. There is a next slide at some point here. There we go. All right, so quickly before I pass the microphone off, I wanted to point out that there are a suite of resources from NBI and other sources for getting to zero. These slides will be available, by the way, online after we log off here for you to dive deeper into the presentation and really access these resources. I'm waiting for my slides to turn here. I know they're probably pretty slow on my end. So we have the Getting to Zero Resources Hub. We have case studies. We have guides and tools. These are the case studies. Also, we made a watch list of zero energy schools, so you can see listed all of those zero energy verified and zero energy emerging schools and see maybe how they approached getting to zero. I mentioned we have these guides. We have a toolkit, a Ziani project guide, so that you can really follow along and go through those steps I mentioned at the beginning. We also have the stakeholder engagement and messaging guide so that you can talk to the people that you really need to talk to and get down onto their level. And from the Department of Energy and the Zero Energy Schools Accelerator Program, there's zeroenergy.org that also has case studies and also covers other building types like offices. Along with that, so the DOE and the National Renewable Energy Lab and ASHRAE put together NREL put together the Zero Energy Process Guide, which is a complementary guide to the Advanced Energy Design Guide for Zero Energy Schools, which is a much more technical document that helps provide that kind of prescriptive path or the steps to get to zero kind of piece by piece. It's a much more technical guide, and this is the complementary version. Come on, next slide. It might just be my Wi-Fi. I apologize, everyone. There we go. There's the Advanced Energy Design Guide for Zero Energy Schools. And then I think that's it. So I'm going to pass this off to Sylvia here, and hopefully she has quicker Wi-Fi than I have. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Riley. So I'm going to share with you the role of student engagement in successful zero energy and zero carbon schools. And then Marianne will be sharing how one district has approached the effort to reduce their climate impact and greenhouse gas emissions and made it work on a step-by-step method with standard funding sources. Oops, too quick. As we saw back in September, student activists around the world are themselves pushing for a greater commitment on everyone's part to respond to the growing threats of climate change. They're asking us, why aren't we taking more forceful action to meet the Paris targets? As the UN report from 2018 noted, we're facing drastic impacts within the next 12 years. The student activist Greta Thunberg has been pushing us to follow the science and get off the business as usual path. She has projected in 2019 that, in fact, the projected safe timeline for action is shrinking quickly, so that whereas in 2018 it looked like we had 12.5 years to get moving, now a year later it's only 8.5 years. And of course, these are all just estimates. In fact, school facilities serving students should be a key part of our efforts to shift that curve from the business as usual trajectory. They can be used to shift our mindset and break our dependence on fossil fuels. And these are some of the examples that you can find in the resources that Riley has just shared with you. The Advanced Energy Design Guide shows a variety of case studies that are feasible in any climate zone. So whether you're in a warm and humid climate zone needing cooling, or whether you're in a quite cold climate, as in Minnesota or Maine, you can find a very clear path to getting to zero energy that's feasible within very close to a standard conventional construction budget. Schools, in fact, are the ideal building type for getting that shift over to zero energy. It's a possibility to impact students in their formative years because of this fortuitous overlap of zero energy requirements and with the STEAM curriculum and progressive learning environments. So where those two worlds overlap, you can create a space for agile minds to envision positive impacts for their own future. In addition, schools have the capacity to reach beyond the students to the teachers, the staff, the parents, the neighbors, and all the families in the community of the school. And so beyond just affecting their direct users, it has this kind of exponential impact beyond its immediate stakeholders. And I'll talk a little bit about that in more detail. Zero energy schools, because of their requirements for improved environment, they result in an enhanced learning environment. They create healthy, comfortable, and inspiring spaces for learning. They also lead to opportunities for collaboration and inquiry and project-based learning. And they also set a new paradigm or mindset, as well as laying out technical knowledge that can help to create positive change. So in particular, the requirements for improved thermal comfort, better air quality, better daylight control, and acoustics, which we throw in just as an important consideration for all schools, those all lead to better outcomes for students by increasing alertness. And studies have shown that they have led to more creative, more collaborative, and more concentrated learning learning process. Building a school with the ambitious goals of meeting zero energy performance allows educators to capitalize on students' youthful enthusiasm to make a big change in their world. It also helps to develop habits of discovery, problem solving, and social action. And I'll be giving you some examples and details of this in a moment. The Zero Energy School can inspire a fulfilling trajectory for student lives. In this 2017 U.S. Energy Report from the DOE showed how jobs in the renewable energy industry will soon overtake jobs in the fossil fuel industry. So we are thinking about their careers and their futures by creating a school that models a better world. I'm not sure why that switched. There we go. So here is an example of students being engaged with their learning. They're creating a graph of how they got to school. So this isn't directly involved with the facility itself, but starts to engage students in that whole thinking about how we're spending our energy resources. Are there other ways to do it? How can we help those that have to use a car? Can we get them in a carpool? So here's an example of student engagement, and I'll share now how that plays a part in creating a successful zero energy school. There are two fundamental principles that are elaborated on in more depth in the Advanced Energy Design Guide that are really keys to a successful zero energy school. And both of these principles have a direct link with student engagement. The first is to adapt a collaborative and integrated team process for the planning and the design and construction, as well as operation of a zero energy school. And that leads directly into creating and reinforcing a culture for zero energy. The reason that this is important is because zero energy schools aren't achieved the day that the certificate of occupancy is obtained. It must be, the effort for zero energy schools continues all the way through the lifespan of the building. As we know, commissioning and making sure that your construction process went well is a big part, but it's also the behavior of the users and their own passion for achieving results that really leads to success. Not only that, but that success, that engagement, then starts to provide all of these collateral benefits to the educational experience. So the collaborative and integrated process begins at the start of defining the problem. And what's most often seen as a good way to get going on this is to set up a series of visioning workshops to engage the stakeholders in setting up the goals for the project. So this is how you set up and put together or gather the full buy-in from all your stakeholders, which will prove critical to that long-term engagement over the life of the building. These visioning workshops should include everyone from teachers, staff, parents, and the neighboring community, but also, critically, the students should be engaged, as you can see in some of these photos. This is an example of a drawing that one student put together in such a workshop, showing that student's understanding of what we can do with impacting our environment to create a better place for studying. Ideally, the students are engaged in actually setting the goals for the Zero Energy School, and it can be zero energy based on site, based on source energy. It can involve setting the EUI targets, energy use intensity, that is the goal. It can involve even more ambitious goals, such as zero carbon, having battery storage so that you're not using the grid at peak times, reducing the carbon footprint of your embodied materials, reducing your maintenance footprint, and optimizing transportation. So in setting up the zero energy, it's not as simple as just saying zero energy, but defining in more detail what those goals are, and that should be a part of the very beginning of the process. Sorry about that. Through engaging students in these energy goals, the school then takes on the mission of nurturing our next generation of environmental stewards. And that's where you start to really build community and create a school that everyone wants to go to. We all tend to become more engaged through the power of narrative and metaphor. At Architecture for Education, we build a story around sustainability to make it accessible for all ages. So, for example, for one of our projects, we highlight the parallels between how a building responds to the environment and how one's own body responds. And so that brings the story of energy use in a building directly to the human bodies of the students themselves. Another example, in this case, at the Rio del Sol Elementary School, the design concept was to create a meandering path through steam makerspaces that is like the meandering route of the adjacent river. So creating these metaphors that students can see and understand starts to pull together a narrative in the larger picture of what they're trying to achieve. So here are some photos of the school just after construction. So making things visual and physical, as well as creating spaces for these physical activities and project-based learning experiences. More directly, Zero Energy schools offer the opportunity for specific STEAM and vocational learning labs. So this example at Discovery Elementary School shows how they learn all about the solar panels, from learning about the energy generation to the impacts of orientation, whether they're fixed or movable solar panels, learning how the AC and DC power works with the inverters, monitoring the energy production, and learning about how you have transmission and storage losses, etc. So all and how the equipment works, the tools for actually reading those results. In another example, this school put on display some of their special equipment through a glass nano wall so that the science program can go out and actually see the equipment in use and learn how it works. And another example here is the Zero Energy building at Bishop O'Dowd School in Oakland, which houses 2 environmental science labs and an outdoor classroom with an adjacent edible garden, pond, and native garden down the slope below. So here it provides lab experiments that can be analyzed and researched up in the classrooms above. So in this case, it's not so much the direct zero energy components, but the Zero Energy School is creating the space for these larger science experiments. So learning about the many facets and components of one Zero Energy School then is quite conducive to project-based learning, which we're seeing more and more as having really great outcomes for student learning. At secondary schools and higher ed, these projects can take the form of more advanced vocational training. In this example, students developed a program to manage the thermostat settings across the building floor plate, helping to keep all occupants happy and comfortable while also keeping energy use low. Another opportunity is to learn and test the various tools for building simulation to understand and test, for example, daylighting, solar access, natural ventilation, thermal bridges, solar generation, etc. So all these tools that the designers use, those can also be shared with the students so they understand more about how their Zero Energy School came to be. And it's important that the results aren't kept to oneself, but that they're shared with the larger community, both the successes and the failures or shortcomings, so that we can then continue the learning curve and build the base of knowledge. So here is an example at Discovery Elementary School where they have a large interactive board in their lobby. Students can go up and click on the different components and see how they're working in real time and what kind of results they're producing. So ensuring the optimal long-term energy performance is, as we mentioned earlier, key to the success of the building. And being able to share those results is really how you keep that engagement over the lifetime of the building. In addition, the district can create communication strategies for engaging the users and really build that knowledge base. So these smaller dashboards can be in each classroom so that they can become actually part of the science curriculum, the math curriculum, etc. This optimization sometimes takes a few tries. In this case, the designers anticipated that users wouldn't take advantage of the beautiful daylight in this multipurpose room, but would instead leave the blinds drawn. So they created a sign by the door that asked the users, please draw the shades only when necessary. Unfortunately, no one looks at the sign. And a more useful approach is going to be shared with you by Marianne, where her students have actually designed the signs themselves and figured out where to post them. Engaging students with Zero Energy Schools can touch on all of the energy conservation strategies of the school, from building and site planning in those visioning workshops all the way through to plug loads and kitchen equipment. So I'll share a few more examples of these with you. So an important piece for students to understand is that all systems must work together in an integrated way. If you open the windows, that's going to impact how the AC is working. It should be turned off. And maybe then the fan goes on. If you open the blinds, then the lights go off. And understanding whether those are automatic or whether they're manually operated and people really need to be paying attention, that's part of their engagement in that long-term success of the building. And then in terms of specific strategies, looking at the operable windows, looking at the shading and the daylight, these are key areas where the users in the building, i.e. the students, can actually watch what's going on and help make sure that it's working in the best way to reduce energy use. They will also see how those choices they make impact their own comfort levels and experience with learning. So whether they have the shades down when it's needed to control glare or have them up to provide daylight, all these kinds of decisions, if they learn how to manage them well in the school, they'll take them home and really see how that impacts their environment throughout their day, throughout their life. So again, the lighting, looking at natural ventilation as well, opening windows on both sides. And there's always, it's a balance of the different needs. If you want to get the breeze through the room, but you need to draw the shades in order to black out the room, making sure that you're picking the right compromise to achieve both the best learning outcomes as well as reducing energy use. Looking at thermostat settings, looking at your own clothing choices in terms of how that impacts HVAC operations. And understanding plug loads, turning things off when you're not using them, and communicating the correct or preferred policy across all of the students in the school. Some of the schools that have zero energy have used competitions between classrooms. Can we reduce our energy needs more than you can by doing this or that? Of course, that depends somewhat on what kind of metering you have, whether you can check the results. Plug loads are a very tricky one because they change over time. And a good way to handle that is to develop a plug load policy in terms of what kind of equipment is allowed in a classroom, whether you're allowed to have a refrigerator or a microwave or whatnot. But inevitably, over time, the curriculum might bring in different needs, such as these terrariums for the snakes, which have quite significant energy needs. They also need refrigerators for their food. So you don't want to block your educators' ambition and types of programs. So instead, what's needed is a way to flexibly recalibrate the plug load policy over time and engage everyone in making sure that it's fair and workable for all the users. In terms of kitchen use, looking at what you eat actually impacts the energy use quite significantly. And what we've found is that healthier foods tend to align with lower energy consumption. Less fried food, more fresh food, tends to correlate with lower energy use. So bringing in those aspects of how what you eat impacts your footprint, your energy and carbon footprint, really starts to shift our mindset in terms of how we are using our Earth's resources. And understanding the importance of good habits, like the daily use of putting the glue covers out and then putting them away, takes discipline, but those habits are quite important to really be successful stewards of our environment. And these kinds of habits are what have become very much a part of the culture at Oxnard Union High School District, and so Marianne will now share those with you.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Sylvia and Riley. Appreciate everything. I'm going to share with you some of our experiences with our energy conservation program. So let's see. The controller.
Just go ahead and click into the screen there, and you should be ready to go.
There we go. Okay. So we started our energy conservation program because we recognized that costs were continuing to go up, and we recognized that our utility budget was second only to what we were paying for salaries. So it was a big opportunity for savings, and the school board recognized that and stated a priority of energy conservation. We developed a partnership with Synergistic, who helped us learn about ways that we could find those opportunities. And in conjunction with that, about the same time, we installed solar panels at all 6 of our high schools through an agreement with SunPower Solar. And, there we go. The goals of the program were to maintain comfort. We don't want people to be uncomfortable, when the summer heat comes. We don't want people to be, roasting and uncomfortable, but just eliminating energy waste. And that saves a lot of money and reduces our carbon footprint. And when we create that climate of conservation, that ensures that we're going to be able to sustain the savings levels. This is an example of a poster that was created by our Green Technology Academy students at Oxnard High School, and it's pretty cute. We installed water bottle refill stations all around the schools, and this was what they came up with as a way to remind other students and staff to use reusable bottles so that we can cut down on the single-use plastic bottles. This is an example at our high schools of the dashboards that are in the lobby of each school, and it showcases the fact that we do have solar energy, in case they couldn't see it already driving into the school. Some places the panels aren't in a front location, they're behind the school. What we did to start off with our behavior-based program is we benchmarked our use of electricity, natural gas, and water, which I track for all school sites. And we found that we could trim our schedules for HVAC, lighting, that sort of thing. So if people are arriving at 7 in the morning, most of the time we don't need to start the heating at 5 a.m., and if people are leaving at 4 p.m., we don't have to have the air conditioning run until later in the day. So we are able to trim these schedules and find opportunities for savings. Let's see, how do we go back? And again, as Sylvia mentioned, plug load is a great opportunity. We encourage all levels of staff and students to participate in the savings. And through education, I would perform energy audits at all hours of the day and night, show up on campus. And if I found something that was accidentally left on, I'd leave a friendly reminder to please turn things off. But it was truly always been a friendly reminder. And before we have school breaks, I send out shutdown checklists, and people really want to participate in the energy conservation program. I think everyone recognizes that it's not a task that one person can perform alone. It requires us all to participate, do our part, and for the most part, people have really embraced that and been willing to help. And this is a really cute poster that, again, our Green Technology Academy students came up with to remind everybody about the phantom load and to unplug whenever possible. One thing that I'm really proud of is our Energy Star Awards, because they provide third-party verification of the success of our energy conservation program. I always present them at a board meeting because it gives me an opportunity to recognize the school board members, superintendent, everybody, even the ground staff, the students, the custodians, educators, because everybody really did contribute to that win, and it is a win for all of us. And of course, it provides financial benefits and environmental benefits to all of us in the community too. It's also a great statement for our community to show that we are making good use of our financial resources. And here's an example of a program that I use. It's an utility accounting software program. It's called Energy Cap, and the CAP stands for Cost Avoidance Program. We've saved about $3.7 million since we started the energy conservation program, and that is from our energy conservation efforts alone. That doesn't even include the savings from the solar panels that we've been able to recognize. And this is a graph that shows the cumulative energy savings as they've taken place over the years, and the environmental benefits as well, which is something that we're proud of, again, financial as well as the environmental benefits. And here's an example, again, of our environmental equivalencies to show our reduction in the carbon footprint. This one actually comes from the dashboard for the solar panels in our high school lobbies. So this one actually illustrates the savings, reduction, the environmental benefits as a result of our solar panels alone. So the two combined are amazing. So again, we had support from Synergistic, and I do track consumption and savings using the Energy Cap utility accounting software program. And also, it's important to perform the site audits at all times of the day and night to discover additional opportunities. And sometimes we find that equipment is running that's not supposed to be running. Maybe there's a mechanical problem or scheduling problem that we can resolve, or at least be made aware of, and then go back and work on it later in the day. The solar panels, as I mentioned, were installed at all 6 high schools, and we own them. It's not a PPA. We own them, so we were able to take advantage of some federal qualified energy conservation bonds that were available at the time. And we had some bond funding, and also the California Solar Initiative rebates amounted to about $7 million, which was really great. There was a great rate that we were able to lock in for those CSI rebates at the time, which paid us a certain amount for each kWh that is generated with the program. One thing that we found to be really important was our 17-year maintenance and operation contract with SunPower, because it incents the company to make sure that the level of generation that they stated we could obtain is actually attainable, because it has a clause in it that requires them to pay us if the guaranteed generation is not realized. So that's been, an important part to keep them as a partner through the years. And then the dashboards in the school lobbies, again, have live and lifetime generation data and the environmental equivalency, so that, again, the community everybody, the students, are aware of the solar panels and what effect they're having on our energy consumption. We have just about every different type of configuration of PV panels at our district. This is Oxnard High School, our largest array of about a megawatt of ground-mounted trackers. Those are actually performing more than they were guaranteed to. And it propelled the school into ZNE as of 2012. In fact, that school has a net annual export of 100,000 kWh. Interestingly enough, even though we are ZNE at Oxnard High School, we still have annual electricity bills of about $60,000. Most of that is for demand charges, and it'll be interesting to see how that is going to change with the new time of use rates that Southern California Edison recently changed to. Here's some more of our PV panels at Hueneme High School, the fixed tilt roof carport panels at Channel Islands, the fixed tilt roof and carport panels. Pacifica High School, again, has both of those configurations. Camarillo High School, again, fixed tilt roof. Rio Mesa has elevated trackers, which also provide shade for the parking lot below. And again, I received a Rookie of the Year award in 2012 from Southern California Edison. It's always nice to have our efforts being recognized by a third party and just proof of the success of our program from a third party. A really exciting thing that I was able to find is Southern California Edison has a Schools Energy Efficiency, or SEEP, program. And I've dipped into that program 4 times now, and we've been able to receive no-cost lighting replacements valued at almost $600,000. We received new gym lights at all of our schools. This is the example of Channel Islands High School. And these used to be the big metal halide lights with the huge lenses and the big heavy ballast. Those things seemed pretty dangerous actually to have on a high school campus. But all 7 of our gymnasiums that we had at the time were retrofitted with new T5s that are coated in a shatterproof coating. So if those balls somehow make it up to the ceiling there, they're not going to cause a problem for our students. And here's an example of Xeriscape that we installed underneath our solar array at Rio Mesa High School. And that was an effort to cut down on water use. So that's pretty fun there. Also, I was able to find about $700,000 in utility company rebates on everything from pool covers, variable frequency drives for pool pumps, irrigation equipment. We received PAL grants, which is Public Agency Landscape grants, to install no-cost smart irrigation controllers at all of our high schools. So there's been a number of opportunities that I've been able to find in working closely with Southern California Edison and our account rep. And then, as you know, if you're at a school district, that Proposition 39, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, became available. Our amount was $3.6 million that we received for projects, for energy efficiency projects. We were able to use the Southern California Regional Energy Network, or SoCalREN. They completed energy audits at our schools, prepared and submitted our energy expenditure plan to the California Energy Commission. They also applied for a utility incentives for our school district, and now they're helping wrap up some of the final installations that are continuing to go in. We're going to save about $238,000 a year, and we received about $49,000 in utility incentives, and use avoidance is about 2.4 million kWh annually. So the exciting part for me, again, is to find free stuff, and SoCal REN basically replaced an ESCO that the district would have had to hire and pay for. And one of the main benefits was the fact that they were vendor neutral, and they provided engineers to consult at every step along the way. In 2018, I applied for a California Energy Commission grant for 10 electric school buses. We didn't get 10, but we got 3. So we are still in the process of deciding what brand we're going to go with. And I'm also applying for funding for charging infrastructure, which SoCal Edison pretty much has us covered with that. And in 2019, actually, an update on this is I applied for another 5 electric school buses. So we'll see how that shakes out. The educational part of our energy conservation program is a really big part of it. We take that very seriously. We have a lot of different academy-based learning at our schools. These provide ways for students to learn about different topics. Some of these students will just be excited to move on to college and pursue a career in that area. Others might go directly into the workforce, and they've got some real life hands-on experience already through the different technologies. And this Green Technologies Academy, or GTEC, is one of our really enthusiastic academies that we have. That's a lot of fun. Here they are one day out at the Summer Solar Science Academy that SunPower Solar runs for us. One of the founders of the company actually is kind enough to come out and help our students learn about solar panels, design a system for a member of the groups. They break into groups, and then they design a system for one of the students' homes, actually. And they do all the calculations, azimuth, and everything. So it's pretty fun for the students, and they're learning. And we have a Sustainable Agriculture Academy. So the students are growing fresh food, and they're using the food. Sometimes they will do some cooking with the food too. And so it's a great way to get them to eat healthy foods and learn about agriculture, which is a big part of our community here in Oxnard. So again, in addition to our financial savings, we have the environmental impacts of our energy conservation program. These environmental impacts are only from our behavior-based energy conservation program. So it's not even counting the savings we have from the solar panels. One of the interesting things that we realized is that it gives us an improved equipment lifespan, because you're reducing the runtime of a lot of different types of equipment, whether it's lighting or HVAC, and you don't have as much maintenance required. You don't have to do as many work orders to keep the equipment running. You have fewer breakdowns. And so it takes a lot of work off of the maintenance staff. Those savings alone can be worth as much as 30% a year in overall maintenance costs. And Sylvia was going to talk about the last couple slides.
Yes, so as Marianne has shown, great savings are feasible today. As numerous case studies show throughout the country, zero energy schools are feasible throughout now. And you can look for those details in the Advanced Energy Design Guide, as well as all the resources provided by Riley. And more significantly, as the science is telling us, there is no time to wait. So we don't need to wait. There is no time to wait. We can get started now. The sooner we start, the simpler it is to get back to a sustainable level of energy use. As you can see in this chart, if we start, the sooner we start shifting from increased energy use, the less steep the path down needs to be. So we need to be at that 2020 point of, I can actually point, we want to be starting the curve down at this point rather than waiting until the last minute or past the last minute, where it's a much steeper drop required to maintain our world as we want it to be. I'm having trouble with the slide. I'm not sure if it jumped back over. There we go. So the students want climate change. They would like to see us move forward. We can help them get there with these wonderful schools that can be built today. And if you want to shift to the next one. So that concludes our presentation. We would welcome questions from you and are particularly interested if there are any particular areas where your teams could use more support. NBI is really interested in providing as much support as possible through other training programs, and we'd like to help advocate for policy changes and incentives. So if in your questions you can give us any guidance on that, we would really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Okay, this is Connie again, and we do have a few questions to go over. When you guys were speaking about low carbon emissions in our schools, how can that affect the science and chemistry labs in the high school settings?
So I can speak to that, and that question can be understood in two ways. Of course, the zero energy school components and systems can be part of the curriculum, so that can be a positive benefit. On the other side of it, science and chemistry labs are generally very big energy users, and so a much more careful design work is required to manage those loads and get them within the EUI that's intended. With elementary schools, that's not such an issue. As you get to high schools and higher ed, it does require a concerted effort to analyze exactly what equipment you need and then specify it correctly to really minimize those loads. For example, fume hoods, the first question is, to what extent are fume hoods really going to be used? And to specify only the number that really makes sense, because all too often you see fume hoods used as storage. But then once the decision is made to include fume hoods, then you can look at specific systems such as acuity systems that manage the airflow loads of those in such a way as to reduce energy use. There's an important balance between safety and clean air and energy use reduction. So that requires working carefully with the vendors and as well as with your mechanical team to put together the right design and specification solution.
Okay. What programs are you guys using for environmental equivalencies?
I use Energy Cap, and that converts the savings into environmental equivalencies.
Okay. And this one goes to Mary Ann's presentation. Is there a list of resources you have tapped into for those grants, rebates, et cetera?
You know what? I've just developed a great working relationship with our SoCal Edison rep, and it's been amazing how much I was able to find out. And then through the SEAT program, they have a vendor that administers that. It's last I heard it was Willdan, and so I developed a good relationship with them, working relationship, and they were able to provide me with information about additional free work they could do for us, free stuff they could get us. And then SoCal Ren was another great resource because they are a nonprofit and they're able to, like I said, provide vendor neutral recommendations about how we can reduce our energy use.
Okay, this is a question about the metal halide lights in the gyms. Why did you change those to T5 when LEDs are much more efficient?
That's a good question. This was in 2012. And so that's when they were replaced. And at that point in time, there wasn't such a great LED alternative to the metal halide.
Okay. Are there off-the-shelf occupant behavior programs to help reduce energy that could be translated to other school districts?
I don't know. Sometimes it depends. You know, automated systems can be really helpful. I'm sure that you know, you guys could probably elaborate on that. There are also times when really users who are extremely looking at ways to that they can reduce energy usage can be more efficient than like a light that goes out after 15 minutes, an occupancy sensor. But I'm sure there's other types of sensors that you might be able to tell us about, either Sylvia or Riley, that could help. Or Connie, sorry.
I don't have any better information than you've just provided.
Okay.
I don't have an off-the-shelf program either.
Okay.
Okay, and this is about the last question I think we'll have time for today. Since 50% of electricity is lost in transmission through conventional means, how is local generation calculated with the PVs?
How is it calculated? Did you want to answer that, Sylvia?
Well, so the first question is whether you're trying to achieve site or source-based energy. So if you're trying to look at source energy, in other words, take into account those transmission losses, and please clarify if I need to go in a different direction. But I think it is a complex question in terms of what really provides the best benefit to the utility, and I think it's still a moving target. There is a certain momentum towards trying to have localized storage so that you are not increasing that peak demand on the utility. But there are downsides to batteries as well. They have their own energy loss issues. And so I think that in terms of really looking at your total carbon footprint is something that is still being worked out.
Okay.
If there's a follow-up to the question, I can probably provide a more precise response.
There hasn't been yet, but I can get you in contact. Thank you.
All right.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and close out today's session. Thank you again for joining us. You will receive links to both the recording and the PDF of the presentation tomorrow. Don't forget to take the quick survey that we have that'll come up at the end of this session, especially if you are seeking AIA credits or a certificate for your attendance today. Thanks again, and we will talk to you soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.